3 years of marriage without even touching her, until the millionaire decided to claim his wife, and he fell deeply in love. Before we start the story, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate the story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. Emily had been married to William Anderson, the most sought-after millionaire CEO in the city, for 3 years, and he treated her like she was invisible. In 3 years of marriage, they had barely exchanged 50 words. She was just part of an arrangement she didn't fully understand. Her humble family needed money, and the Anderson family needed William to marry. That was it. Emily went downstairs to the kitchen at 6 o'clock. William always had breakfast at 6:15, so she had 15 minutes to eat and disappear. That was the quiet, painful routine of every day. But that morning, something was different. William was already coming down the stairs. Emily quickly stood up to leave, but this time, something unusual happened. "Emily," the cold voice made her freeze in the doorway. She turned around slowly. William was standing there, looking sharp in his perfect suit, his piercing blue eyes locked on her. It was the first time in months he had said her name. "Yes?" Emily answered, trying to hide the surprise in her voice. "Do you have something suitable to wear to a corporate event?" He asked flatly, like he was talking to an employee. Emily blinked, confused. "I don't understand." "It's a simple question. Do you have a dress appropriate to accompany the CEO of Anderson Enterprises to a gala dinner?" Emily's heart started to race. In 3 years, she had never appeared in public with him. Not even once. "Why are you asking me that?" she asked, finding a bit of courage she didn't know she had. William studied her for a moment, as if he was seeing her for the first time. "Because you're coming with me, tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. "But why?" "You never." "Business reasons," he cut her off coldly. "I need to appear as a stable family man. You are my wife, at least on paper." The words hit like knives. Emily felt her face flush with humiliation, but she held her head high. "And if I don't want to go?" William raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by her resistance. "That's not an option, Emily. It's a duty." "Duty." She repeated the word with bitterness. "Like everything else in my life, right?" For a moment, something flickered across William's face. It almost looked like regret, but it was gone so fast that Emily thought she imagined it. "This event is important. International investors, million-dollar contracts. You need to look presentable." Emily lifted her chin with pride. "Presentable? You don't even know who I am, William. In 3 years, you never bothered to find out." "I know enough." "You do?" Emily stepped closer, her eyes glowing with defiance. "Then tell me, what's my favorite color? What did I study? What do I do during the long hours you ignore me in this house?" William stayed silent, clearly uncomfortable. "That's what I thought." Emily sighed. "I'll go to your event, Mr. Anderson, but not because it's a duty. I'll go because after 3 years of being invisible, I'm curious to see this world you chose over me." She walked past him, leaving the kitchen with her head held high. William stood there, watching her go up the stairs, and for the first time in 3 years, he truly saw the woman he had married. Emily had a graceful presence, even in simple clothes. There was strength in her movements, dignity in the way she carried herself. How had he never noticed that before? Upstairs, Emily sat on the bed, her heart racing. Tomorrow night, for the first time in 3 years, she would be seen publicly as Emily Anderson. The question was she ready for what that might bring? Downstairs, William remained in the kitchen, feeling something strange in his chest. Why did her reaction affect him so deeply all of a sudden? Emily looked at herself in the mirror for the 10th time. The navy blue dress she had chosen was simple but elegant. The only one she owned that could work for a formal event. She had bought it years ago, before the marriage, when she still had hope for a normal social life. At exactly 7 o'clock, she came down the stairs. William was waiting in the living room, flawless in his black tuxedo. When he saw her, he paused for a moment as if something about her had caught him off guard. "You look appropriate." That was all he said, but Emily noticed his eyes lingered on her longer than they needed to. The car took them to the Grand Beverly Hotel. During the whole ride, they stayed silent. Emily looked out the window, nervous. 3 years hidden, and now she would be introduced as the wife of the most powerful CEO in Los Angeles. "Remember," William said as they arrived, You are Emily Anderson. Smile, be polite, and don't talk about business. Got it. Be a pretty decoration and stay quiet, Emily replied sarcastically. William glanced at her quickly, something like amusement flashing in his eyes for just a second. The room was filled with important people, businessmen, investors, socialites. Emily felt like a walking fraud, but she held the elegant posture she had learned by watching her mother-in-law on rare occasions. William, a tall, charming man, approached. I finally get to meet the mysterious wife. Richard Thompson, William said formally. My wife, Emily. Richard took Emily's hand and kissed it politely. It's a real pleasure, Emily. I'm an international investor. I work with European markets. The pleasure is mine, Emily replied naturally, smiling. Your wife is delightful, William, and much more beautiful than the photos do her justice. Emily was puzzled. What photos? She had never posed for any pictures as William's wife. Do you speak any other languages, Emily? Richard asked, clearly interested. Yes, I speak French and Spanish fluently. Richard's eyes lit up. Magnifique. I've been looking for someone to help with a few contracts in South America. Would you be interested? William cut in sharply. Emily doesn't work. What a waste, Richard said, still looking at Emily. A smart and beautiful woman should use her talents. Emily felt a wave of gratitude. Finally, someone saw she had more to offer than just being decorative. I'd love to help, Emily said, ignoring William's warning look. Perfect. How about dinner tomorrow to go over the details? Richard suggested. She's busy, William replied coldly. Actually, I'm not, Emily said, looking directly at William. I'd be happy to have dinner with you, Mr. Thompson. Richard smiled broadly. Excellent. I'll pick you up at 8. As Richard walked away, William grabbed Emily's arm harder than necessary. What do you think you're doing? He hissed. Having a civilized conversation, something you might want to try. You're not having dinner with him. Emily pulled away abruptly. And why not? You said it yourself. I'm only your wife on paper, and on paper I can do what I want. William stared at her, something dangerous in his eyes. You're my wife. Since when has that mattered to you? For the rest of the evening, Emily noticed that William didn't leave her side, not even for a moment. Every time Richard came near, William showed up like a possessive bodyguard. It was strange and confusing. In the car on the way home, the tension was thick. You're not having dinner with him, William said again. Yes, I am, Emily replied calmly. Why? Just to get under my skin? Emily turned to face him. To remind myself that I'm a real person, William. Someone with a mind, skills, value. Something you've completely forgotten. I haven't forgotten anything. No? Then tell me. When was the last time you really saw me? Not as an object or an obligation, but as a person. William stayed silent, but Emily could see the tension in his jaw. That's what I thought, she murmured. When they got home, Emily went straight to the bedroom, but before going in, she turned to William, who was still standing in the hallway. Thanks for tonight. It was eye-opening. Emily, his voice made her pause. Yes? William hesitated, like he was about to say something important, but then shook his head. Nothing. Good night. Emily entered the room, but couldn't sleep. For the first time in 3 years, she had seen something different in William. Jealousy, possessiveness, whatever it was, it had clearly gotten to him in a way nothing else ever had. Across the hall, William was still awake, pacing. The image of Richard looking at Emily, touching her hand, making her smile, was burned into his mind. And worst of all, he had felt an irrational fury, a primitive urge to push any man away from his wife. His wife. When had Emily actually become his wife in his mind, and not just a family obligation? William stopped at the window, confused by his own emotions. In one night, Emily had shaken 3 years of carefully built indifference. William woke up at 5 a.m., like always, but this time he couldn't go back to sleep. The image of Richard Thompson looking at Emily, touching her hand, making her smile, it was burned into his mind like a hot brand. He got up and walked to the window. 3 years. 3 years of living with Emily under the same roof, and he had never felt this strange, unsettling feeling in his chest. It was like something primal had awakened inside him, something he couldn't control or understand. Why on earth did he care if another man was interested in Emily? He went down to the kitchen earlier than usual, 6 o'clock. To his surprise, Emily was already there, sitting at the counter with a cup of coffee, looking out the window. She was wearing a simple robe, her hair falling loosely over her shoulders. William stopped at the doorway, really noticing her for the first time. How had he never realized she was beautiful? Not just presentable, like he had said yesterday, but truly beautiful. There was something about her profile, the gentle curve of her neck, the way the morning light lit up her face. "You're staring at me," Emily said without turning around, startling him. William cleared his throat, embarrassed to be caught. "Just checking if you're ready to cancel tonight's dinner." Emily turned to face him, and William felt a strange twist in his stomach when their eyes met. "I'm not canceling." "Why not? What does this man have to offer that's so important?" Emily tilted her head, studying him with curiosity. "Attention, respect, the feeling that I matter." Her words cut deeper than William expected. He stepped closer to the counter, standing nearer to her than he had in years. "You matter. To you?" Emily asked, her eyes shining with challenge. "Really? Because until last night, I might as well have been a ghost." William couldn't answer. Because she was right, he had completely ignored her, treated her like part of the furniture. But now, looking at her, he couldn't understand how he had been so blind. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Emily asked, her voice softer now, almost a whisper. "Like what?" "Like, you're seeing me for the first time." William swallowed hard. "Maybe I am." The silence between them grew heavy, filled with something neither of them could name. Emily felt her heart beating faster. There was something different in William's eyes, an intensity she'd never seen before. "William," she began, but he cut her off. "Cancel the dinner." "Why?" Emily stood up, now face to face with him. "Give me a real reason." William struggled with the words. How could he explain that the idea of another man touching her, smiling at her, making her laugh, was driving him crazy? How could he admit that? Suddenly, he cared, after 3 years of pretending she didn't exist. "Because you're my wife," was all he managed to say. "On paper," Emily replied, though something had changed in her voice too. "On paper," William repeated, but his eyes said something completely different. They stood there for a moment, staring at each other, the tension between them like static in the air. Emily could feel the warmth of his body, the scent of his expensive cologne mixed with something purely masculine. "You've changed," she murmured. "What do you mean?" "Yesterday you barely remembered my name. Today you're different." William ran a hand through his hair, clearly frustrated. "I don't know what's happening to me." The raw honesty in his voice caught Emily off guard. It was the first time she had seen him vulnerable, confused, human. "What did you feel last night when Richard was talking to me?" William looked at her for a long moment. "Anger. An irrational anger, seeing him look at you like that. Jealousy?" The word hung in the air between them. William didn't answer, but the look in his eyes gave him away. "Why?" Emily pressed. "Why do you suddenly care?" "I don't know," William burst out, stepping away from her. "I don't know why I suddenly can't get you out of my head. I don't know why the thought of you having dinner with another man is driving me insane." Emily was shocked by the passion in his voice. 3 years of coldness, and now this. "William, you want the truth?" He turned back to her, eyes shining with intensity. "I spent the whole night thinking about how I've never really looked at you, about how I've been a fool for 3 years, about how another man saw in one night what I was blind to for 3 years. Emily's heart pounded. "And what did he see?" William stepped closer again, his eyes moving over her face, like he was trying to memorize every detail. A smart woman, beautiful, strong, someone who deserves to be appreciated, not ignored. Emily felt tears sting her eyes. 3 years, William. I waited 3 years for any sign that you saw me as more than a burden. I know, and I hate myself for it. Then why now? Why only now? William hesitated, then said the hardest truth he had. "Because seeing another man want you made me realize that I want you too, and that terrifies me." The words hung in the air between them, changing everything. Emily felt like the ground had shifted beneath her feet. "I'm still having dinner with Richard tonight," she said, but her voice trembled. "Why?" Emily lifted her chin with determination. "You had 3 years to notice me, William. 3 years to treat me like your real wife. You can't expect me to drop everything just because you finally decided I exist." With that, she walked past him and went upstairs, leaving William alone in the kitchen. more confused and unsettled than he had ever been in his life. Upstairs, Emily leaned against the bedroom door, her heart pounding. Everything had changed in just one morning. The question was, what would she do with this change? Emily looked at herself in the mirror one last time. She had chosen an emerald green dress that brought out her eyes, something she had kept for years, waiting for a special occasion. Today, she felt like she deserved to feel beautiful, to feel seen. It was 8 o'clock in the evening when the doorbell rang. Richard was right on time, just as he had promised. Emily came down the stairs with Grace, carrying a small black purse. She didn't see William anywhere. He was probably locked in his office, as usual. "Emily, you look stunning," Richard said as he saw her, offering his arm like a true gentleman. "Thank you, Richard. I'm looking forward to our conversation." What Emily didn't know was that William was watching from his office window, his hands clenched into fists as he saw another man take his wife out. The anger he felt was irrational, primal, and completely unfamiliar to him. Richard took her to one of the most exclusive restaurants in Beverly Hills. The setting was elegant, with soft lighting and classical music playing in the background. Emily felt like she had been transported to a world she had almost forgotten, a world where she was treated like a lady, not like someone invisible. "So, Emily," Richard began after they ordered dinner, "tell me about yourself." "William doesn't talk much about his personal life." Emily gave a small, sad smile. "There's not much to tell, at least nothing William would know." "What do you mean?" "Well," Emily paused, then decided to be honest. "My husband and I, we're not exactly close. This is probably the first social dinner I've had in 3 years." Richard raised his eyebrows, surprised. "That's hard to believe. A woman like you should be at every event in town." Emily gave a soft laugh. "You're very kind, but the truth is, William prefers to keep our lives separate." "What a shame," Richard murmured. "Tell me about your background. Yesterday you mentioned you speak languages." Emily's eyes lit up. Finally, someone interested in who she really was. "I have a degree in business administration from UCLA. I speak French, Spanish, and Italian fluently. Before I got married, I worked for an international consulting firm." Richard leaned in, clearly impressed. "That's amazing. What was your area of expertise?" "Emerging markets and international negotiations. I helped American companies expand into Latin America." "My goodness, Emily, you're exactly the kind of person I need for my projects in Argentina and Chile. I've got mining contracts that require someone with your knowledge." Emily felt a wave of satisfaction. How long had it been since she felt useful, valued for her skills? "It would be wonderful to work again," she admitted. "I miss using my mind for something meaningful." At that moment, Emily noticed a familiar figure entering the restaurant. Her blood ran cold. It was William. He looked impeccable in a dark suit, but his expression was stormy. His blue eyes scanned the room until they landed on her, and Emily felt a chill when she saw the intensity in his gaze. "Emily." William's deep voice cut into the conversation as he approached their table. Richard stood politely. "William, what a surprise to see you here." "I'm sure it is," William replied coldly, his eyes locked on Emily. "May I speak with my wife for a moment?" "Of course," Richard said, confused by the tension in the air. "I'll step out for a minute." As soon as Richard walked away, William sat in the empty chair, never taking his eyes off Emily. "What are you doing here?" Emily asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "The question is, what are you doing here?" "Having dinner. Like I said I would." William looked around the romantic setting, the candles, the soft music, the intimate atmosphere. "This doesn't look like a business dinner." Emily lifted her chin defiantly. "And how would you know? You've never taken me out to dinner." The words hit William like a punch. It was true. In 3 years of marriage, he had never taken her on a date, never shared a romantic meal with her. "Emily," William began, his voice lower now, "I didn't know you had a degree in business." Emily blinked, surprised. "How do you know that? I heard you two talking." "You were spying on us?" William had the decency to look embarrassed. Yes, and I realized there's a lot about you I never knew." 3 years, William," Emily said, her voice full of hurt. "You had 3 years to ask, to care." "You speak 3 languages," William continued, as if listing discoveries. "You worked in international consulting. You're an expert in emerging markets." "And that surprises you?" "Completely," William admitted. I thought you were just what? A simple girl your family picked out for you? A burden you had to carry?" William stayed silent, because that's exactly what he had thought. "You never took the time to find out who I really am," Emily went on, her voice rising. "You never asked about my dreams, my ambitions, my fears. To you, I was just an inconvenient obligation." "Emily, no," she cut him off. "You don't get to show up now after 3 years of ignoring me and act like you suddenly care." William leaned forward, his eyes shining with something Emily couldn't quite identify. "But I do care. More than I should. More than I understand." "Why? Because another man showed interest? Because you finally realized you might be losing something valuable?" "Yes," William admitted harshly. "Exactly that." The brutal honesty of his answer left Emily speechless for a moment. "At least you're honest," she murmured. Richard came back to the table, clearly sensing the tension. "Everything all right here?" William stood up, but his eyes stayed on Emily. "Just saying goodbye. Emily, I expect to see you at home later." It wasn't a request. It sounded almost like a command, spoken with the authority of a man used to being obeyed. Emily felt a mix of irritation and something else, something that made her heart beat faster. "Maybe," she replied, keeping her dignity. William paused for a moment, as if he wanted to say more, then turned and left the restaurant, leaving Emily slightly trembling. "Well," Richard said, sitting down again, "that was intense. Your husband seemed possessive." Emily let out a humorless laugh. 3 years of indifference and now possessiveness. Men are strange creatures. "Emily," Richard said gently, "may I say something?" "Of course. I saw the way he looked at you. It wasn't just possessiveness. It was desire. Plain and simple." Emily felt her face flush. "You're imagining things." "No, I'm not. And I also saw the way you looked at him. There's history between you two. Complicated and unresolved." Emily sighed. "It's a long story." "The best ones always are," Richard said with a knowing smile. "But may I say something else? Any man who ignores a woman like you for 3 years is a fool. But a man who finally realizes what he has, well, he might be dangerously determined not to lose it again." The rest of the dinner passed with pleasant conversation about business and opportunities, but Emily couldn't get William out of her mind. The way he had looked at her, the intensity in his voice, the raw admission that he cared. By the time Richard brought her home, it was past 11 at night. "Thank you for a wonderful evening," Emily said sincerely. "It's been a long time since I felt this good. The pleasure was mine, and about the job offer, please consider it seriously. You'd be a perfect fit for my team." Emily nodded as Richard drove away, then turned to face the mansion. All the lights were off except one, William's office. He was waiting for her. Emily entered quietly, but she knew she wouldn't be able to avoid the conversation waiting for them. 3 years of silence had been broken, and there was no going back. She walked up the stairs slowly, each step echoing in the quiet house. As she passed the office, the door opened. "Emily?" She stopped but didn't turn around. "We need to talk," William said. Emily finally turned to face him. "Now you want to talk? After 3 years?" "Yes, now." There was something in his voice that made Emily pause, a vulnerability she'd never heard before. "All right," she said at last. "Let's talk." Emily walked into William's office, her nerves on edge. The room was classically masculine, dark wood shelves, leather chairs, and a large desk where William spent most of his nights. He was standing by the window, hands in his pockets, looking out over the city lights. "So," Emily said, crossing her arms, "you wanted to talk." William turned slowly to face her. "I want to understand." "Understand what?" "You, us, how we ended up here." Emily laughed bitterly. 3 years, William. You had 3 years to understand anything about me. "I know, and I admit I've been neglectful." "Negligent?" Emily repeated in disbelief. "You treated me like I was invisible." William ran a hand through his hair, clearly frustrated. "I didn't know how to act. This marriage, it wasn't my choice." "It wasn't mine either," Emily shot back quickly. They looked at each other for a moment, the weight of 3 years of silence between them. "Why did you agree to it?" William finally asked. Emily felt a sharp pain in her chest. "You really don't know?" "I know there was some kind of arrangement between the families, but I never asked for details." "Of course you didn't ask," Emily murmured. "Why would you? You were getting a quiet, convenient wife." "Emily, please, help me understand." Emily looked at him for a long moment, then sat down in one of the armchairs. The conversation they had avoided for 3 years was finally going to happen. "You want the truth?" she said, her voice softer. "The truth about why a girl from a humble background married the almighty CEO William Anderson?" William sat in the chair across from her, his eyes fixed on hers. "Yes. I want to know everything." Emily closed her eyes for a moment, letting the memories come back. 3 years ago. Emily was sitting at the kitchen table in the modest house where she had grown up in a small town 2 hours from Los Angeles. Her mother, Sarah, looked nervous, her hands shaking as she flipped through some papers. Her father, David, was pacing back and forth, his face tight with worry. "Mom, what's going on?" Emily asked, watching them with growing anxiety. Sarah exchanged a meaningful glance with David before letting out a deep sigh. "Emily, sweetheart, we need to talk to you about something very important." "You're scaring me." David stopped pacing and sat heavily in the chair next to his daughter. "Emily, our business is in serious financial trouble." Emily blinked, confused. Her parents' small accounting firm had always been stable, modest but enough to support them. "What kind of trouble?" "Debt," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "A lot of it. We invested everything in expansion that didn't work out." "How much?" David swallowed hard. $2 million. Emily felt her blood run cold. $2 million? How is that even possible? "We made bad partnerships, risky investments. We trusted the wrong people," David explained, guilt heavy in his voice. "What now?" "Now," Sarah continued, "we're going to lose everything. The business, the house, our savings. Your father could even face criminal charges." Emily felt like the world was collapsing around her. "There has to be something we can do. A bank, an investor." "There is," David said slowly. "There is one possibility." "What is it?" Sarah took her daughter's hand. "The Anderson family. They've been our clients for years. The patriarch, Robert Anderson, made us an offer." "What kind of offer?" David hesitated. "They'll pay off all our debts and give us a fresh start. In exchange." "In exchange for what?" "In exchange for you marrying their son, William." Emily was silent for a long moment, trying to process the words. "You're serious?" "Emily," Sarah said, tears in her eyes, "I know how this sounds, but it's our only option." "You want me to sell myself? Literally?" "It's not like that," David protested. "The Andersons are a respected, wealthy family. William is young, successful. You'd have a good life. A life I didn't choose." "Emily, please," Sarah pleaded. "If we don't accept, we lose everything. Your father could go to jail." Emily stood up abruptly, walking to the window. Her future was being decided by debts and business deals. "What if I say no?" The silence that followed was her answer. "You already said yes, didn't you?" Emily said, turning to face her parents. "You've already agreed to it." "We needed a quick decision," David admitted. The creditors were closing in. Emily felt a mix of anger and despair. "What about what I want, my dreams, my plans? You can keep studying, working. It's just an arrangement." "An arrangement," Emily repeated, the word bitter in her mouth. "You sold your daughter for $2 million. Emily, it's not like—" "It's exactly like that," Emily exploded. "You turned me into a transaction." She ran to her room and locked the door. For hours she cried, caught between fury and hopelessness. How had her life come to this? Days later, Emily met William for the first time. The meeting was formal, cold, more like a business meeting. He was handsome, polished, but distant. He treated her with professional courtesy, as if they were finalizing a contract. "I hope you understand," William said during that first meeting. "This is a mutually beneficial arrangement between our families. I expect nothing more than discretion and the occasional public appearance." Emily had swallowed her pride and agreed. What choice did she have? Back to the present. Emily opened her eyes to find William watching her closely. "So now you know," she said, her voice rough with emotion. "Your parents saved my family from ruin, and I was the price." William was silent for a long moment, taking in the story. "I didn't know the details," he finally said. "Of course not. Why would you care? You got a convenient wife who wouldn't interfere with your life. I saved my family from jail and poverty. Everyone won, except you, except me," Emily confirmed. "I lost my freedom, my dreams, my dignity, all for $2 million. William stood and walked over to her, stopping just a few steps away. "Emily, I didn't realize how much it cost you." "How could you? You never asked. In 3 years, you never once showed any interest in how I felt or what I wanted. And what did you want? Emily looked at him, surprised by the question. I wanted to be loved for who I was, not for what I represented financially. I wanted a real marriage, not a business deal. I wanted to feel valued, not like a burden you had to carry. William knelt down in front of her chair, his blue eyes intense. And now? What do you want now? Emily felt tears sting her eyes. Now I'm not sure anymore. 3 years of being ignored changed me. I got used to feeling invisible, to expecting nothing. But last night reminded me what it feels like to be seen, to be appreciated. It was scary and wonderful. William reached out, hesitating before touching her face. Emily, I know I don't have the right to ask this, but give me a chance. A chance for what? To start over, to get to know the woman I married, to try and build something real between us. Emily looked at him and for the first time saw vulnerability in his eyes. Why now, William? Why try after 3 years? Because I finally see what I've lost. Because I realized I have an extraordinary wife and I was too blind to see it. Because the thought of you with another man drives me crazy. Emily felt her heart race, but the pain of those 3 years still weighed heavily on her. I need time, she said at last. 3 years of hurt don't heal overnight. William nodded and lowered his hand. I understand. But Emily? Yes. I'm going to fight for you, for us. Even if it takes time, even if it's hard, I won't give up. Emily stood, feeling emotionally drained. Good night, William. Good night, Emily. As she left the study, William was left alone with the weight of all he had just learned. 3 years wasted. An extraordinary woman ignored. A marriage that could have been real if he hadn't been so blind and arrogant. But now he knew the truth, and he was determined to win the heart of the woman who was his wife on paper, but who needed to truly become his in life. The next morning, Emily woke up to the smell of fresh coffee coming from the kitchen. Strange. William always left before she woke up. She came downstairs, curious, and found a scene that left her completely stunned. William was in the kitchen, not just having coffee, but making breakfast. There were pancakes on the stove, fresh fruit on a plate, and 2 steaming mugs of coffee on the counter. Good morning, he said, turning when he heard her come in. He was dressed casually, jeans and a button-down shirt with no tie, something she had never seen him wear. Good morning, Emily replied cautiously. What's going on? Breakfast, William said simply, flipping the pancakes with a surprising amount of skill. You know how to cook? I learned in college. Nothing fancy, but it's edible. Emily stayed in the doorway, watching him with suspicion. Why are you doing this? William turned off the stove and faced her fully. Because I want to start over. For real this time. William, sit down, he said, gesturing to the counter where he had set 2 places. Please. Emily hesitated, but curiosity got the best of her. She sat down, watching as he served the warm pancakes. Thank you, she murmured, still trying to process the surreal moment of having breakfast with her husband for the first time in 3 years. How did you sleep? William asked, sitting beside her. Emily almost choked on her coffee. Excuse me? Sleep. How was your night? You're actually asking how I slept? William paused, realizing how strange such a simple question sounded between them. Yes, I am, and I plan to keep asking, every day. Emily studied his face, looking for any sign that this was some kind of game or manipulation. Why? Because we're married, Emily, and I want us to really be married. 3 years, William. You had 3 years to decide that. I know, and I deeply regret every day I wasted. Emily ate in silence for a few moments, the taste of the pancakes overshadowed by the confusion in her mind. And what if I say it's too late? She finally asked. William set his fork down and turned fully to face her. Then I'll prove you wrong. The intensity in his voice sent a chill down Emily's spine. How? By showing you, every single day, what kind of husband I can be, what kind of man I can be for you. Emily stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. You can't just decide now that you wanted to be a real husband and expect me to go along with it like nothing happened. William stood as well, but kept his voice calm. I don't expect you to go along with it. I hope you'll give me the chance to earn it. Earn it? Emily gave a short, bitter laugh. I'm not a prize to be won, William. No, you're not, he agreed, taking a step toward her. You're my wife, And I was a fool for not valuing that from the beginning. Emily stepped back, but found herself pinned against the counter. "You're confusing me," she admitted, her voice softer. "How? 3 years of coldness, and now this. I don't know what to believe." William took another step, now dangerously close. "Believe this," he said, his voice low. "Believe that I've finally woken up, that I finally saw what was right in front of me." Emily could feel the heat radiating from his body, the familiar scent of his cologne mixed with something purely masculine. "William," she began, but he interrupted. "Cancel, Richard." "What?" "The job he offered you. Turn it down." Emily blinked, his closeness making it hard to think clearly. "Why would I do that?" "Because I want you to work with me." Emily gently pushed him back, creating space between them. "Work with you?" "At Anderson Enterprises. You're an expert in emerging markets. We've got projects in Latin America that need exactly your kind of expertise." Emily stared at him, stunned. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering a partnership, professional and personal." "This is insane. It's an opportunity." Emily shook her head and walked away from him. "I don't understand what's going on with you." William followed, but kept a respectful distance. "What's going on is, I finally realized I've ignored the most extraordinary woman I've ever met, and now I want to make it right. How can I trust this isn't just a phase? That tomorrow you won't go back to ignoring me?" William stopped walking, and Emily turned to face him. "Because," he said, his blue eyes filled with determination, "I can't go back to ignoring you. Last night, watching you have dinner with another man, I realized it would be impossible to pretend you don't exist." "Why last night? What changed specifically last night?" William hesitated, then chose to be completely honest. "Jealousy, pure and simple. Seeing another man look at you, touch your hand, make you smile, it drove me crazy, and it made me realize that you're not just my wife on paper. You're mine." The words hung in the air between them. Emily felt something stir in her chest, a mix of anger, pain, and something more dangerous. "Yours?" she repeated, her voice low and sharp. "Mine," William confirmed, stepping toward her again. "I'm not your property, William Anderson." "No, you're not," he agreed. "But you are my wife, and I want you to be my wife in every sense of the word." Emily felt her heart race. There was something in the way he looked at her, an intensity she'd never seen before, that was doing strange things to her body. "And if I don't want to?" she challenged. William gave her a slow, almost dangerous smile that made butterflies stir in her stomach. "Then I'll just have to change your mind." "How?" Instead of answering, William took another step, now close enough that Emily could see the tiny golden flecks in his blue eyes. "Starting with this," he whispered, raising his hand to gently touch her face. Emily should have stepped back. She should have said something. But his touch was surprisingly gentle, and she had spent 3 years being ignored, 3 years feeling invisible. "William," she whispered, but didn't move away. "Tell me to stop," he said, his thumb softly tracing her cheek. Emily knew she should. She knew this was playing with fire, but the words wouldn't come. "You're playing with me," she finally managed. "I'm not playing," William replied seriously. "I've never been more serious in my life." They stood like that for a moment, looking at each other, the tension between them growing like electricity in the air. It was Emily who finally stepped back, putting some space between them. "I need time to think," she said, her voice shaky. "How long?" "I don't know. Days, weeks. You don't just erase 3 years that easily." William nodded, but he didn't look discouraged. "All right. But while you're thinking, I'm going to keep showing you the kind of husband I can be." "William?" "And Emily? Yes, I'm not giving up. Not this time." With that, he walked out of the kitchen, leaving Emily alone, her heart pounding and her mind a complete mess. Later that day, Emily found flowers in her room, white roses with a simple card, "To New Beginnings." At lunchtime, William showed up at home, something he had never done before, carrying Thai food from a restaurant Emily had mentioned liking years ago. How did he even remember that? That evening, instead of locking himself in his office, William invited her to watch a movie in the living room. Emily said no, but she noticed he left the door open and the volume low, as if hoping she might change her mind. For 3 days, the pattern continued. William completely changed his routine around Emily. Breakfasts together, lunches at home, dinners where he actually talked to her about her day. Emily felt confused, cautious, but also curious. It was like she was getting to know a completely different version of the man she had married. "He's really trying," Emily whispered to herself on the third night, watching William in the living room, reading a book instead of working on his laptop. The question was she willing to give him the chance he was asking for? And more importantly, was she willing to risk her heart again? A week had passed since William began his efforts to win Emily back. She was still holding back, but she had started to notice little changes in herself. Looking forward to breakfast, wondering what they'd talk about over dinner, and catching herself watching him when he wasn't looking. That Friday morning, Emily was in the garden reading when Mrs. Thompson came over with the cordless phone. "Mrs. Anderson, there's a man named Richard Thompson on the line. He says it's about business." Emily felt a small wave of anxiety. She hadn't spoken to Richard in a week, since that dinner that had changed everything between her and William. "Hello, Richard." "Emily, it's so good to hear your voice. How are you?" "I'm fine, thank you. And you?" "Great. Listen, I'm calling because I need an answer about our job offer. I've got meetings in New York next week, and I'd really love to have you on the team." Emily hesitated. Over the past few days, William had mentioned more than once the possibility of her working at Anderson Enterprises, but she hadn't given a final answer. "Richard, I'm still considering my options." "Of course, I understand. How about we meet today to talk about it? I can swing by and pick you up. Maybe lunch to go over the details?" Emily looked toward the house. William was in an important meeting and wasn't expected back until the evening. "All right, what time?" "Noon? Perfect. See you soon, Emily." Emily hung up the phone, unaware that William had come home early and overheard part of the conversation from his office window. William climbed the stairs with heavy steps, a familiar anger rising in his chest. Richard Thompson, again. That man was becoming a persistent problem. All week, William had been doing everything he could to win Emily back. He had changed his entire routine, canceled important meetings just to be home, done everything possible to show her what kind of husband he could be. And now Richard was back to complicate everything. At 11:30, William watched through the window as Emily got ready. She had chosen a yellow dress that made her skin glow, her hair down in soft waves. She looked beautiful, and that only made his irritation worse. When Richard's car arrived, William made an impulsive decision. He grabbed his Porsche keys and followed them. Richard took Emily to a fancy restaurant in the center of Beverly Hills. The setting was elegant but not intimate like the first time, which Emily appreciated. "So," Richard said after they ordered, "tell me what's going on. You sounded different on the phone." Emily sighed. "Things at home are complicated. With William, he's changing, or at least pretending to." Richard leaned forward, interested. "What do you mean?" "He's decided he wants to be a real husband now. He's doing everything he can to win me over." "And that's a bad thing?" Emily picked at her food, distracted. "I don't know. 3 years of indifference don't just disappear in 1 week. But are you thinking about giving him a chance?" "I'm confused," Emily admitted. "Part of me wants to believe he's really changed, but the part that was ignored for 3 years is afraid it's just a phase." Richard reached across the table and gently covered her hand with his. "Emily, can I be honest with you?" "Of course. You deserve more than scraps of attention when it suits him. You deserve someone who values you from the very beginning." Emily looked down at their hands, touched by Richard's sincerity. "Thank you. That means a lot to me. That's why my offer still stands. Work with me. Be independent. You don't need to rely on his moods to decide your future." Just then, Emily saw a familiar figure walk into the restaurant. Her blood ran cold. William. He walked straight over to their table, his face a mask of controlled coldness. "What a coincidence, finding you two here," William said, his voice dangerously calm. Richard let go of Emily's hand and stood up politely. "William, what a surprise." "I'm sure," William replied, his eyes fixed on Richard's hand, still close to Emily's. "William," Emily said, trying to keep her voice steady, "what are you doing here?" "Having lunch." "Just like you, apparently." The tension at the table was obvious. Other customers had started to glance their way. "Why don't you join us?" Richard offered, clearly trying to ease the situation. "How kind," William replied, pulling out a chair and sitting down without waiting for a real invitation. Emily stared at him, stunned by his boldness. Actually, she said, we were having a private conversation. About business, I assume, William said, his eyes never leaving her face. Yes, Richard confirmed. I'm trying to convince Emily to accept my job offer. How interesting, William said, his tone making it clear he found it anything but interesting. And what kind of job is that? Emily felt her anger rise. The kind that lets me use my education and skills, something you never cared to learn about. William turned to her, something sharp in his gaze. I did offer you a position at Anderson Enterprises. As a favor, Emily shot back. Richard offered because he sees my professional value. I'm sure he sees plenty of things in you, William said, his voice full of insinuation. Richard cleared his throat awkwardly. Maybe I should give you two some privacy. No, Emily said quickly. You don't have to go anywhere. William stood up abruptly. Actually, he does. Excuse me, Richard asked. You need to stop chasing after my wife. Emily stood too, her face flushed with anger. Chasing? He's offering me a professional opportunity. He's offering more than that, and we all know it. Richard stood as well, clearly offended. William, I think you're misunderstanding. Am I? William turned to Richard, his posture intimidating. You don't think I notice how you look at her? How you find excuses to touch her? William, Emily hissed, horrified. It's true, William went on, his voice rising. He's interested in you, Emily, and you're enjoying the attention. Emily felt like she'd been slapped. How dare you? I dare because I'm your husband. On paper, Emily shouted. Only on paper. The whole restaurant was now staring at them. Richard placed some money on the table. I think I'd better go, he said quietly. Emily, call me when you decide about the offer. He left quickly, leaving Emily and William staring at each other in the awkward silence. Congratulations, Emily said, her voice shaking with rage. You just publicly humiliated me. You humiliated yourself by letting him touch you like that. Emily took a step closer, her eyes blazing. Who do you think you are? You ignored me for 3 years. 3 years. And now you act like you have some kind of right over me? I do have rights over you. No, you don't, Emily shouted, not caring about the people watching. You gave up those rights the moment you started treating me like I didn't exist. William grabbed her arm, not roughly but firmly. Let's go. Let go of me. Emily, everyone's staring. I don't care. Let them stare. But William was already guiding her out of the restaurant, his hand steady on her back. In the parking lot, away from the curious eyes, Emily yanked her arm free. How dare you, she shouted. How dare you follow me and embarrass me like that? I couldn't help it. Couldn't help what? Seeing you with him. Seeing another man touch you, look at you like what? Like he wants you. William burst out. Emily stopped shouting, stunned by the intensity in his voice. So what if he wants me? She asked, her voice lower now, but still full of challenge. William took a step closer, his blue eyes burning with something raw and primal. So what? He repeated. Emily, you're my wife. Then act like my husband. That's what I'm trying to do. By following me, embarrassing me, acting like you own me? William ran his hands through his hair, clearly frustrated. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be a real husband. I never learned. The raw honesty in his voice caught him by surprise. Emily, too, was startled by the vulnerability in his tone. Then learn, she said, her voice calmer now. But not like this. William looked at her, and Emily saw something in his eyes that made her forget to breathe for a second. Emily, he said, his voice rough, you have no idea what you're doing to me. What do you mean? William took another step closer, so close she could feel the warmth of his body. I mean, you're driving me crazy, completely out of my mind. Emily's heart began to race. There was something in the way he looked at her, an intensity that stirred feelings she hadn't felt in a long time. William, you have power over me, he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. A power I don't understand. A power I can't control. Emily really looked at him, and for the first time, she didn't see the cold, in-control CEO. She saw a man who was lost, confused, and deeply in love. Power? She repeated. To make me feel jealous. To make me lose control. To make me want things I didn't even know I wanted. Emily felt a strange wave of satisfaction. After 3 years of feeling invisible, realizing she had that kind of effect on him was intoxicating. "And what do you want?" she asked, her voice softer now. William looked at her for a long moment before answering. "You, Emily, I want you." His words hung in the air between them in the parking lot. Emily felt like the world stopped for just a moment. 3 years of marriage, and it was the first time he'd said those words with that much honesty, with that much feeling. "William," she began, but he shook his head. "Don't say anything now. Just think about what I said." They drove home in separate cars, the tension between them still thick in the air. Emily spent the rest of the afternoon in her room, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. His words echoed in her mind. "I want you." It wasn't just physical desire she'd heard in his voice. It was something deeper, something desperate. The next morning, Emily came downstairs for breakfast, expecting to see William, but he was already gone. Mrs. Thompson told her he'd left early for a business meeting that would take all day. Emily felt an unexpected wave of disappointment. She'd gotten used to having breakfast with him, to his steady attention. Around 3 in the afternoon, her phone rang. It was Richard. "Emily, I hope you don't mind me calling. I wanted to apologize for what happened yesterday." "Richard, you don't need to apologize. I should be the one apologizing for William's behavior. Can I be honest with you? Of course. He's in love with you, completely gone. I know the signs." Emily's heart skipped a beat. "You think so?" "I'm sure of it. The question is, how do you feel about it?" Emily was quiet for a moment. Confused. 3 years, Richard. 3 years of distance. And now, I don't know. He's different. Really different. "Emily, may I suggest something?" "Yes. Why don't you have dinner with me tonight? Just as friends. William can come too, if he wants. Maybe it'll help all of us clear the air." Emily hesitated. "I don't know if that's a good idea. I'll be at Giovanni's at 8. If you change your mind, just send me a message." At 7, Emily was getting ready when she heard William's Porsche pull into the driveway. Her heart jumped. She had decided to go to dinner with Richard, but now she wasn't sure it was the right choice. She walked downstairs in an elegant black dress, determined to keep her independence. William was in the living room, still in his suit but without the tie. When he saw her, he stopped in his tracks. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you." "Heading out?" Emily took a deep breath. "I'm going to have dinner with Richard." William didn't move for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. "I see. You understand?" "You're testing me," William said, his eyes locked on hers. "You want to see if I'll lose control again." Emily was caught off guard by how perceptive he was. "And will you?" William walked up to her, stopping just a breath away. "Yes," he said. "I'm going to hate every minute of it. I'll be imagining him making you laugh, touching your hand, looking at you the way only I should." Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. "But," William continued, "I'm not going to follow you. I'm not going to make a scene, because I trust you." "You trust me?" "You're an honorable woman, Emily. You always have been. If leaving with me is what you truly want, then one night with another man won't change that." Emily looked at him, moved by the maturity of his response. "And what if I decide I want to leave with him?" William closed his eyes for a moment, like the question physically hurt. "Then I'll have to accept that I missed my chance." There was a vulnerability in his voice that almost made Emily cancel the dinner right then and there. "William." "Go," he said, stepping back. "But Emily?" "Yes? Remember what I told you yesterday. Remember that I want you. Not out of convenience, not out of duty, because you're extraordinary, and I was a fool not to see that sooner." Emily arrived at Giovanni's with a heart full of conflict. Richard was already there, as elegant as always. "Emily, you came," he said, kissing her hand politely. "I did. But Richard, we need to talk." "Of course, let's sit down." Once they were seated, Emily got straight to the point. "You were right about William. He's in love with me." Richard smiled. "And you? How do you feel about that?" "Confused, scared, but I think I'm in love with him too." Richard nodded like he had expected that answer. "Then why are you here with me?" Emily sighed. "Because I don't know if I can trust these feelings. 3 years is a long time to be ignored and then suddenly told you're loved. But people change, Emily. Sometimes it takes almost losing someone to realize what they mean to us." "Are you encouraging me to stay with my husband?" Richard laughed. "I'm being realistic. That man is hopelessly in love with you, and you with him. I'm just a catalyst in this story." "A catalyst?" I'm the one who made William realize how he felt. Without the competition, he might never have woken up to what he had right in front of him. Emily looked at Richard with new respect. You're a very wise man. And you're a very loved woman. The question is, what will you do with that? While they talked, Emily didn't notice someone entering the restaurant. William had decided he couldn't stay home, imagining what might be happening. He walked to the bar, ordered a whiskey, and watched from a distance. To his surprise, he didn't see Richard trying to seduce his wife, but rather a serious conversation between two friends. "Excuse me," a voice said next to him at the bar. William turned and saw Richard. "Thompson." "William, mind if I join you?" William gestured to the stool beside him. "Emily?" "In the restroom. I thought this was a good chance for us to talk." "About?" "The fact that you're a very lucky man." William looked at him, puzzled. "Your wife is an extraordinary woman, smart, loyal, strong, and completely in love with you." "How can you be sure?" "Because she spent the whole evening talking about you, about how you've changed, how confused she is, and how she's in love and scared all at once." William felt something shift in his chest. "She said that?" "Not in those exact words, but that's what I heard." "William, can I give you some advice?" "Go ahead." "Stop being afraid to give yourself fully. She needs to know you won't walk away from her again." William nodded, taking it in. "And what about your job offer?" Richard smiled. "Withdrawn. She belongs at Anderson Enterprises, and with you." When Emily came back from the restroom, she found the two men talking calmly at the bar. "What's going on here?" she asked, confused. William stood and walked over to her. "Richard and I reached an understanding." "What kind of understanding?" "That I'm a lucky fool," William said, his eyes locked on hers, "and I'm not going to waste a second chance." Emily looked between the two men. "Richard, I'll leave you two to talk," Richard said, grabbing his coat. "Emily, it was a pleasure meeting you. William, take good care of her." Once Richard left, Emily turned to William. "What are you doing here?" "I couldn't stay home picturing you with another man." "But you said—" "I said I trusted you, and I do, but that doesn't mean it was easy." Emily stepped toward him. "William, Let's go home," he said gently. "We need to talk, for real this time." Emily nodded and they left the restaurant together. In the car, the tension was thick but different. It wasn't anger or frustration. It was anticipation. "Emily," William said as he drove, "when we get home, I'm going to tell you everything. Everything I feel, everything I want, everything I hope for us." Emily felt her heart race. "And what if I said I want to tell you everything too?" William glanced at her quickly, then looked back at the road. "Then, we're in for a very long night." Inside the mansion, Emily and William stood by the entrance, looking at each other. The air was heavy with tension and anticipation. 3 years of silence were about to be broken forever. "Emily," William said gently, "before anything else, there's something I need you to know." "What is it?" "I love you." The words hung between them. Emily felt tears sting her eyes. "William?" "No, let me finish," he said, stepping closer to her. "I love you in a way I never thought was possible. I fell in love with the strong woman you are, with the grace you showed even when I was cold, with the intelligence I was too blind to see." A tear rolled down Emily's cheek. 3 years, she whispered. 3 years I waited to hear those words. And I'm a fool for taking this long to say them. William reached out and gently touched her face. "Emily, I know I don't deserve it, but could you love me too?" Emily looked at him through her tears, seeing real vulnerability in his eyes for the first time. "I already love you," she confessed. "I think I always did, even when you ignored me. Even when it hurt so much, I wanted to give up." William closed his eyes, as if her words brought him physical relief. "Emily." This time she stepped forward, placing her hands on his face. "Kiss me," she whispered. William didn't need another word. He leaned in and kissed her, softly at first, then deeper, as Emily responded. It was their first real kiss. In 3 years of marriage, they had never kissed with love, with longing, with the hope of a future together. When they pulled apart, both were breathing heavily. "Emily," William whispered against her lips, "I want to be your husband, truly, in every way." Emily felt her heart race. "I want that too." William took her hand and led her upstairs, to the bedroom she had never entered before, the master suite. The room was elegant, masculine, but welcoming. Emily looked around, suddenly nervous. Emily, William said, noticing her hesitation, if you're not ready. It's not that, she said quickly. It's just… William, there's something you need to know. What is it? Emily took a deep breath, trying to gather courage. We never… William frowned, confused. Emily, what are you trying to say? I'm a virgin, she blurted out, the words rushing out. William froze completely, as if struck by lightning. What did you say? I'm a virgin, Emily repeated, softer this time. William stared at her, clearly in shock. Emily, we're married. On paper, she reminded him. You barely spoke to me, let alone… William ran a hand through his hair, trying to take it in. My God, Emily, you're 25. I know how old I am, but why? Emily sat down on the edge of the bed, suddenly feeling exposed. Before I married you, I was focused on school and work, and after the wedding, well, you made it pretty clear you weren't interested in me. William knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. Emily, I'm so sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I never even imagined. How could you? You never asked me anything about my life before the marriage. William closed his eyes, overwhelmed by guilt. Do you hate me? No, Emily said softly. I don't hate you, but I need you to understand, tonight, if it happens, it'll be my first time, with anyone. William looked at her, something shifting in his expression. Emily, are you sure? I can wait. We can wait. Emily touched his face. I've waited 3 years to truly be your wife. I don't want to wait any longer. With infinite tenderness, William kissed her again. This time with a reverence Emily had never known. With patience, care, and love, William turned that night into the most beautiful and intimate experience Emily could have ever imagined. Emily woke up to the smell of coffee and something sweet nearby. She slowly opened her eyes and found herself in William's bedroom, now theirs, with the morning sun filtering through the curtains. Good morning, my wife, a soft voice said. Emily turned and saw William walking into the room with a tray full of food. There were fresh croissants, fruit, coffee, orange juice, and even a small rose in a vase. William, she said, sitting up in bed, you didn't have to. Yes, I did, he said, placing the tray down and sitting beside her. I wanted to do something special for the most important woman in my life. Emily felt her heart warm. It was hard to believe this was the same man who had ignored her for 3 years. How are you feeling? He asked, gently touching her face. Different, Emily admitted. Complete. William smiled and kissed her gently. I don't regret anything, Emily said. Neither do I. Actually, I regret waiting so long. They had breakfast in bed, talking and laughing like they never had before. It felt like two strangers getting to know each other, but with the deep connection of people who had always been close. In the days that followed, Emily saw a complete change in William. He canceled meetings to be with her, took her to places in Los Angeles she had never seen, and most importantly, he talked to her about everything. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Emily finally asked the question that had been on her mind. William, why were you so distant before? Even before we got married, people said you were cold. William was quiet for a moment, then sighed. My family, he said at last. I was raised by the Andersons. You know my father. Everything was about business, money, success. My mother, she cared more about appearances than her own children. Emily turned to face him. I was never taught about love or real relationships. Everything was a transaction, a strategy. When our marriage was arranged, I treated it like any other deal. And now? William took her hand, interlacing their fingers. Now I know I was completely wrong. I've learned that love isn't a weakness, it's the strongest thing there is. Who taught you that? You did, he said, looking her straight in the eyes, watching your strength, your dignity, your ability to love even when it wasn't returned. Emily felt tears in her eyes. William? Emily, I know that 3 years of distance don't just go away. I know you're still afraid I'll go back to how I was. It was true. Even with all the changes, part of Emily still feared it might not last. I am afraid, she admitted. I'm afraid that once the newness fades, you'll start ignoring me again. William turned fully toward her, gently holding her face in his hands. Emily Anderson, look at me, she did. I swear to you, on my life and on our love, that I will never treat you like that again. You've changed who I am at the deepest level. There's no going back. How can I be sure? Because, William said, you're not just a win for me. You're my redemption, my second chance to be the man I should have been from the beginning." In the days that followed, William proved his words with actions. He was present, attentive, protective, but not possessive. When Emily decided to take on an independent consulting project, he fully supported her. "Are you sure?" Emily asked. "I'll be working with your competitors sometimes." "I'm sure," William said. "I want you to be happy and fulfilled. Your success is my success." Their physical relationship also deepened. William was patient, affectionate, always making sure Emily felt loved and respected. Every kiss, every touch, every intimate moment was a confirmation of the love they shared. One night, as they lay together after another evening of closeness, Emily finally said the words she'd been holding back. "I trust you." William turned to face her. "Really? Really? Completely. With my heart, my life, and our future." William kissed her deeply, and I promise never to break that trust. Emily knew he meant it. The cold, distant man she had married 3 years ago was completely gone, replaced by someone who loved her with honesty and intensity. For the first time in 3 years, Emily felt truly married, truly loved, truly whole. 2 months had passed since Emily and William had truly begun their marriage. They were happier than they ever thought possible. Emily had started her consulting work, and William supported her in every project. Their love grew stronger every day. Then on a Tuesday morning, everything changed. Emily was organizing some papers in William's office when she found a folder that had fallen behind the desk. Curious, she opened it to see if it contained important documents that needed to be filed. What she saw made her sink into the chair. They were contracts. Detailed merger contracts between Emily's parents' company, Peterson Accounting, and Anderson Enterprises. The dates were from 3 years ago, right around the time of their wedding. With trembling hands, Emily read each page. The agreement was clear. Their marriage would secure the merger of the two companies. The Peterson family would keep 20% of the new business, receive a large cash payment, and William would take full control of operations. "This can't be," Emily murmured, feeling a wave of nausea rise in her stomach. She kept reading and found something even worse. There were clauses about children, public appearances, and how the marriage had to last at least 5 years to ensure the stability of the merger. Emily was literally part of a business contract. The door opened and William walked in, smiling when he saw her. "Emily, you won't believe how productive the meeting was. Emily, are you okay?" Emily stood up slowly, holding the contracts. "Can you explain this to me?" she asked, her voice strangely calm. William looked at the papers, and Emily saw the color drain from his face. "Emily, let me explain." "Explain what? That our marriage was a business contract? That I'm just part of a corporate merger?" "It's not like that." "It's not?" Emily gave a bitter laugh. "It's right here in black and white. Clause 5, the marriage between William Anderson and Emily Peterson will ensure the full acquisition of Peterson Accounting by Anderson Enterprises." William reached out to her, but Emily stepped back. "Emily, please, let me explain the context." "What context? You knew this from the beginning." "I knew about the merger, yes. But what? Thought I was too stupid to find out? Thought you could use me forever without me ever learning the truth? Emily, you're misunderstanding." Emily threw the contracts onto the table. "Am I? Then tell me, William, what part am I misunderstanding? The part where our marriage helped you take over my family's business? Or the part where there are specific clauses about having children?" William ran a hand through his hair, clearly desperate. "Emily, yes, there was a business agreement, but that was before I really knew you, before I fell in love with you." "Before you fell in love?" Emily repeated in disbelief. "William, you knew this yesterday when you told me you loved me. You knew it last week when we made love. You knew it through all these months while pretending our relationship was real." "I wasn't pretending. My feelings are real." "How can I believe that? How can I trust anything you say when our whole marriage was built on a lie?" Emily started pacing, her anger and pain building. "My parents knew too, didn't they? That's why they pushed the marriage so hard. It wasn't just about paying off debts. It was about selling the family business." William didn't answer, which told her everything. "My God," Emily whispered. "I was sold twice, once to save the debts, and again to make sure you got everything." "Emily, please." "No, Emily burst out. "Don't touch me. Don't tell me you love me. It was all fake." "It wasn't fake. What we feel is real." Emily turned to face him, tears streaming down her face. "How can I know what's real? How can I trust anything when I just found out I'm just a piece in some business deal?" William took a step toward her. "Because you know my heart. You know who I've become with you." "Do I? Or are you just a really good actor?" The accusation hit William like a punch. "Emily, you know that's not true." "Do I? 2 hours ago I thought my husband loved me for who I was. Now I find out he loves me because I made him rich. The company means nothing compared to you." "Then give it up," Emily challenged. "If I mean more than the business, undo the merger. Give my family's company back." William hesitated, and that hesitation was all Emily needed to see. "That's what I thought," she said, her voice breaking. "When it comes to choosing between me and the money, you choose the money, just like 3 years ago." "Emily, it's not that simple. It's exactly that simple," Emily shouted. "Either you love me for who I am or you love me for what I represent financially. It can't be both." Emily ran to the bedroom and started packing. William followed. "What are you doing?" "Leaving. I'm going to a hotel." "Emily, don't do this. We can fix this." "Fix it?" Emily turned to him. "How do we fix the fact that our entire marriage was based on a lie? Because what we have now isn't a lie." Emily stopped folding clothes and looked at him. "How can I be sure? How do I know if you've truly changed or if you've just gotten better at pretending?" William stayed silent. No answer. "That's what I thought," Emily murmured, zipping up her suitcase. "Emily, please don't go. Stay and let's talk. We'll find a way through this." Emily looked at him one last time, her heart breaking. "William, I need time to process all of this. I need to figure out what's real and what's performance. And what if I say I'm not letting you go?" Emily raised her chin with dignity. "So you're going to prove you haven't changed at all, that you still think you can control me?" William stepped back, realizing that forcing her to stay would only confirm her fears. "How long?" "I don't know. Maybe forever." Emily picked up her suitcase and walked toward the door. "Emily," William called, his voice cracking. "I love you. That's real, even if nothing else is." Emily stopped at the door without turning around. "I hope it is, William. Because if it's not, then we've really lost everything." Emily had been staying in a modest hotel in downtown Los Angeles for a week. 7 days of pain, confusion, and tears. She didn't answer William's calls, didn't reply to his messages, and had told the hotel reception not to share any information about her. She needed time to process everything. The marriage that had finally become real was built on a huge lie. How could she trust anything after that? Meanwhile, William was living through his own nightmare. The mansion felt empty without Emily. He couldn't eat, barely slept, and couldn't focus at work at all. But it was time to act. Emily had thrown down a challenge. If he really loved her more than the business, he had to prove it. On Monday morning, William walked into the boardroom at Anderson Enterprises, where his father, Robert Anderson, was waiting with the company lawyers. "William, you asked for this urgent meeting. What's it about?" William placed a folder on the table. "I want to undo the merger with Peterson Accounting." The silence in the room was deafening. "What did you say?" Robert asked in disbelief. "I want to return the company to the Peterson family." "Completely. You've lost your mind. That merger is worth $15 million. "I know exactly what it's worth, Dad." Robert stood up, clearly angry. "William, you can't just undo a 3-year deal on a whim. This isn't a whim. It's the right thing to do." "The right thing? You destroyed your marriage over this." William stood up too, looking his father in the eye. "I didn't destroy my marriage. You did, when you made my wife part of a business deal without telling me the full terms." "Terms?" "William, you knew there were business advantages to the marriage. I knew it would be beneficial, but I didn't know Emily was literally part of the contract. I didn't know there were clauses about children, about how long we had to stay married." One of the lawyers cleared his throat. "Mr. Anderson, technically, undoing the merger is possible, but it would cost a fortune in legal fees and settlements." "I don't care what it costs," William interrupted. "Make it happen." Robert grabbed his son's arm. "William, think about what you're doing. $15 million. The company's reputation." William pulled away. Dad, my whole life you taught me that money was the most important thing, that business comes before everything. But you were wrong. What do you mean wrong? Emily is worth more than 15 million. She's worth more than the whole company. She's worth more than anything I have or will ever have. Robert shook his head. You're being irrational, emotional. I'm being human, something you never taught me to be. William turned to the lawyers. I want you to prepare all the necessary documents. Peterson Accounting goes back to David and Sarah Peterson. Any money they received as part of the deal, let them keep it. Consider it compensation for the 3 years. William, Robert tried to argue. The decision's made, Dad. I'm going to win my wife back, and I'm going to do it the right way this time. William left the room, determined. He had one stop to make before going after Emily. David and Sarah Peterson were having coffee in the kitchen when the doorbell rang. Sarah went to answer and was surprised to see William standing there. William! What a surprise. Please come in. William stepped in and found David in the living room. David, Sarah, I need to talk to you about something important. Of course. Have a seat. Would you like some coffee? No, thank you. William took a breath. I want to give your company back. David and Sarah exchanged a confused look. What do you mean, give it back? Peterson Accounting. I want to cancel the merger and return everything to you. But why? Sarah asked. Because I found out that Emily learned about the terms of the deal, about how the marriage was part of the business arrangement. David let out a deep sigh. We were afraid that day would come. You should have told her from the beginning. We know, Sarah said, her eyes filling with tears. But we were desperate, the debt, the possibility of David going to jail. I understand the circumstances, William said, but Emily feels betrayed by all of us, and she's right. Where is she? David asked. In a hotel. She hasn't spoken to me in a week. Sarah started to cry. We lost our daughter because of our greed. They didn't lose, William said firmly, but we need to make this right. That's why I'm giving everything back. Emily needs to know she matters more than any business deal. William, David said, are you sure? This must mean millions for your company. I'm absolutely sure. Without Emily, none of it means anything. William stood up. The lawyers will contact you about the legal details. I want everything finalized by the end of the week. After William left, David and Sarah sat in silence, trying to process what had just happened. He really loves her, Sarah murmured. Yes, the question is, will it be enough? Emily was in the hotel room, trying to read a book, when she suddenly felt a wave of nausea. She rushed to the bathroom and vomited violently. Once it passed, she sat on the bathroom floor, trying to make sense of what was happening. She had been feeling strange for days, tired, nauseous, emotional. Then a terrifying thought crossed her mind. It can't be, she whispered. Emily looked at the calendar on her phone. Her period was late. Very late. With trembling hands, she got dressed and left the hotel. At the nearest pharmacy, she bought 3 different pregnancy tests. Back in the room, she took all 3 and waited through the longest minutes of her life. Positive, positive, positive. Emily sat on the bed, staring at the tests, and began to cry. She wasn't sure if it was from joy, fear, or complete despair. She was pregnant with William's child. The man she loved, but no longer fully trusted. The man who had lied to her about the foundation of their marriage. How could she raise a child in the middle of all this confusion? How could she make decisions about her future when she didn't even know if her marriage was real or just part of a deal? Emily picked up her phone, typed William's number, but couldn't bring herself to press call. What would she even say? How would she explain? Instead, she sent a simple message. I need to talk to you. It's important. His reply came within seconds. Where? Emily looked around the impersonal hotel room where she'd been hiding for a week. In our room. At home. 1 hour. She needed familiar ground for this conversation, because after it, nothing would be the same again. Emily was pregnant, and that changed absolutely everything. She arrived at the Anderson mansion with her heart racing. Her hands shook as she unlocked the door with the key she had never returned. The house was quiet, but she could feel William's presence somewhere inside. She walked up the stairs slowly, each step echoing in the empty hallway. She entered the bedroom they had shared in recent months, the room where they had discovered love, where they had truly become husband and wife. Emily sat on the edge of the bed, the 3 pregnancy tests hidden in her purse. How would she tell him? How would she explain she was carrying the child of a man she no longer fully trusted? The sound of the Porsche pulling into the driveway made her stand. William was home. A few minutes later, she heard his footsteps on the stairs. The door opened and he appeared looking exhausted, but his eyes lit up when he saw her. "Emily," he said softly, "you came back." Emily tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she began to cry. All the emotions of the past week, the betrayal, the pain, the fear, and now the pregnancy, hit her all at once. "Emily, what is it?" William rushed to her, kneeling by the bed. "Please, tell me what's going on." Emily sobbed uncontrollably, her body shaking. William hesitated, then wrapped his arms around her, holding her against his chest. "It's okay," he whispered, stroking her hair. "I'm here. We'll get through this." "No, William," Emily managed between sobs. "It's not okay. Nothing is okay. Tell me what I can do." "Anything." Emily pulled away from him and wiped her tears. "There's something I have to tell you. Something that changes everything." William felt a knot in his stomach. "What is it?" Emily took a deep breath, trying to calm down. "First, I need you to tell me something, and be honest with me. Anything. What did you do about the merger? About my parents' debt company?" William looked her in the eyes. "I called it off. Peterson Accounting goes back to your parents next week. They can keep the money they received." Emily blinked, surprised. "You really did that?" "I did. $15 million, Emily. I gave it all back." "Why?" William took her hands in his. "Because you're worth more than any amount of money. Because I want you to know my love for you has nothing to do with business." Emily began to cry again, but this time they were tears of relief. "William." "Emily, I know I've made terrible mistakes. I know I should have told you everything about the agreement from the beginning, but my feelings for you are real. You've completely changed my life." Emily looked at him, seeing nothing but honesty in his eyes. "I believe you," she whispered. "Really?" "Really. And now I need to tell you something that will change our lives forever." William held his breath. Emily reached into her purse and pulled out 3 pregnancy tests, placing them on the bed between them. "I'm pregnant, William." William stood completely still, staring at the tests. Then he looked at Emily, then back at the tests. "Pregnant?" he repeated, like he couldn't quite grasp the word. "Yes. I found out today." Suddenly, William pulled her into his arms and kissed her with a passion that surprised her. When they pulled apart, he was crying. "Emily," he said, his voice shaking with emotion, "I love you so much, and I already love this baby too." Emily felt her heart fill with warmth. "You do? Even after everything, all the confusion?" "Especially because of it," William said, placing a hand on her still flat stomach. "This baby will be born from real love, not a contract. This is our new beginning." Emily fell into his arms, finally allowing herself to feel joy. "Now it's just the 3 of us," William whispered into her hair. "A real family." "A real family," Emily repeated, smiling through her tears. 6 months later, Emily was glowing in her white wedding dress, her 6-month baby bump perfectly nestled in the soft fabric. This time she had chosen every detail: the dress, the flowers, the music. This time she was marrying for love. The ceremony was held in the garden of the Anderson estate, decorated with white roses and soft lights. The guests were few, only close family and true friends. William stood waiting at the altar, looking perfect in his tuxedo, tears in his eyes as he watched her walk toward him. "Today," the officiant said, "William and Emily renew their vows, not out of duty or a deal, but out of true love." "Emily," William said, taking her hands, "3 years ago, I married you out of convenience. Today, I marry you because I can't imagine life without you. You've taught me what love is. You've taught me how to be human." Emily smiled, tears running down her own cheeks. "William, you've shown me that true love is worth waiting for, that people can change, that second chances are real. I promise to love you and our child forever." When they kissed, the guests clapped, but Emily could only hear her heart beating in sync with William's. 1 year later, Emily looked out the window of the small office they now shared in downtown Los Angeles. The sign on the door read, "Anderson and Peterson International Consulting," the company they had started together with their own savings. They had started small, but in just 1 year, they already had 15 employees and contracts in 3 countries. Emily focused on emerging markets, William handled corporate strategy. They were the perfect team. "How's our little CEO?" William asked, walking into the office holding their 3-month-old son. Emily smiled and took the baby from his arms. David William Anderson had his father's blue eyes and his mother's sweet smile. "He's perfect," Emily said, kissing the baby's forehead. "Just like his mom," William whispered, kissing Emily softly. Her parents had received a generous sum when the merger was undone, enough to start over comfortably. Peterson Accounting was thriving again, now run by David with renewed energy. "Do you ever regret it?" William asked, as he sometimes did. "Staying with me after everything?" Emily looked at her husband, their son, and the company they had built together. "Never," she said firmly. "You've proven that true love is worth more than any amount of money." William hugged her, holding the three of them close. What did you think of Emily and William's story? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to hear all our stories. And check out more emotional stories right here on the final screen.